So if you've seen Cannibal Holocaust, you'll recall that in it they refer to the jungle, the part of the jungle they go to, as the Green Inferno. And the title of this movie is a reference to that line from Cannibal Holocaust. I'm not sure if you want to call this movie a remake, a reimagining, a spiritual successor, whatever you want to call it, but this film is very, very heavily based off of Cannibal Holocaust. And not just the plot, but the characters, the themes, the music in many cases uh, bears a lot of homage to Cannibal Holocaust. However, this one is a lot more base than Cannibal Holocaust is, and I say that unironically. This is much more of. I mean, there's still the extreme gore and violence, but this one's much more of a comedy or kind of a very brutal satire than it is necessarily a pure horror movie like the original was. This film initially came out in 2013, and I think it's aged really well given the refugee crisis and all the people who joined ISIS and Black Lives Matter, and just kind of all the examples we have of white liberals having no sense of self preservation and putting virtue signaling above their personal well being. And I think it's aged really well, and it's kind of more relevant now than it even was back in the day. So that being said, let's just get into the movie. So our main character is Justine, who I admit is the actress who plays her is quite pretty. She's Italian Chilean, and actually the director of this, Eli Roth, married her after this movie, which is kind of a Chad thing to do, to be honest. So she's a university student named Justine, and the movie starts off with a bunch of students engaging in activism to try to get health care for the janitorial staff, and they're on a hunger strike. Funnily enough, she has a base Jewish roommate who just basically calls them like a bunch of virtue signaling, that word I'm not allowed to say on YouTube, and just says they're trying to like show how tolerant they are and assuage their Jewish white middle class guilt, I think is the exact word that the exact phrase more or less that she uses. So this really thirsty black guy invites her to their activist group. And he's like, "Don't worry, it's just chill. You don't need to do anything. It's really nice." So they go there and they're led by this guy who turns out to be a psychopath later on named Alejandro. And Justine makes some joke and he yells at her and kicks her out and basically just acts like a psycho. Now, being a liberal white woman, she finds this extremely arousing, and she basically goes up and like begs to be included as part of their group. And he's like, "What are you interested in?" And she's like, women's rights in Africa, particularly female genital mutilation, and dealing with that, because that's kind of introduced at the beginning of the movie. It's kind of funny because they list all the places like where it is. Like they're like, "Oh, Muslims, tribal Africans, the Amazon." I'm like, there's a certain like religious group who's not really mentioned there. I guess some of like the syncretic Christians in Africa maybe do it, but I can't see any actual Christians being okay with that kind of thing. So he's like, what you have to do is you have to go to like villages in Africa and publicly shame them until they stop doing it by like live streaming the whole thing on Reddit. Actually, they mention Reddit in this movie, which is amazing. So she's like, "I Alejandro, you're so sexy. You're There's that Lady Gaga song, Alejandro. It's like he's hot like Mexico. A friend of mine came up with he's corrupt like Mexico. So she's like, "You're so dreamy. Is there something I can do to prove it?" And he's like, "Yeah, we're gonna go to Peru. There's this jungle that's gonna get torn down, and there's like indigenous people on it, and those indigenous people are uncontacted, and they're like this peaceful tribe." of noble savages and all this other stuff. So her father's a UN lawyer, a very kind of prominent international political figure, and he tries to explain to her like it's retarded to go to Peru with no like clue what the hell she's doing and no information and not telling anybody where she's going. And she's just like, Dad, I'm gonna go save the world. And also Alejandro is really hot because he mistreats me and I like that. So they go to Peru, and it very clearly is like indicated that this whole thing was a really bad idea and they're completely unprepared for it. So they travel upstream, very similar to kind of what you see in Cannibal Holocaust, and they come across the site where the bulldozers are starting to knock down the jungle. They're also going to knock down the uh, tribal village nearby so that they can build the gas extraction plant there. So what they wind up doing is they chain themselves to the bulldoze to the trees to try to stop them from building, but the lock on Justine's chain doesn't work. So the guards pull her off and are about to execute her when Alejandro yells that she's the daughter of a UN official. And they live stream the whole thing, and they get trending, and they're number one on Reddit. And they gain like all this international attention and support for their activist group. And then immediately after that, there's an explosion that destroys the bulldozers. And the so it turns out like so then the militia, the PMC arrests them and send them back. So they were taken there by a drug dealer named Carlos. So it's a little complicated, but from my understanding, this scene combined with what we find out later is the Carlos was in league with the private militia and the whole thing was staged. So the idea was they blow up the bulldozers, which prevents the oil company from moving in. Plus, they got all the international attention to get the Peruvian government to stop that particular oil company, but they were being paid by a rival oil company who rehires the paramilitary and is going to move in to take the resources. And they the whole the whole near execution was also staged because of her father's prominence and to bring more attention to the cause. So the whole thing is just self promotion and to make money from the rival oil company. Obviously, everybody gets pissed off about it, but Alejandro's like, "You people are all really stupid. This is how the real world functions. You're all just naive kids if you think that this isn't like real." And he's like, "I never had any intention of saving this people. They're doomed no matter what." Etc. So that happens, and they get back on the plane to go return to whatever passes for civilization. And the plane engine explodes and they crash. So a couple of them die, a couple more of them get killed as the Amerindians attack them, and the survivors are carted off to the village. So they immediately start eating them one by one. They initially take the thirsty black guy, and Alejandro starts to reveal what a sociopath he really is. He's like, I'm glad they took that guy first. He was really fat. He'll last them a week. He's like, we just have to hang on here for a couple days, and then the next round of bulldozers and their mercenaries will come here, and they'll free us. So they have that plan, but the rest of them like want to get out. So the females are taken out of the cage and they get probed with a knife, and it turns out that Justine is a virgin, so they prepare her to receive female genital mutilation. There's some like lame subplot where she forms a bond with one of the like children who saves her later in the movie. So one by one they get killed. They kill some of them by one of them kills themselves after realizing the food they were given was actually human remains. There's kind of a funny scene where Alejandro just starts jerking off because he's like, it'll relieve stress, and it's important to relieve stress during these situations. And he's just exceedingly callous about the whole thing. And it's interesting. It just kind of shows like how the entire like self-righteous thing and the whole like status signaling thing is just an example of extreme narcissism and his desire to kind of dominate other people. Like I said, this is a really good deconstruction of narcissism and kind of activism and just this random like third world shit. So like I said, more and more of them die. They come up with this like goofy Scooby Doo. They call it a Scooby Doo plan, where they put marijuana down the throat of one of the women, the girls who died, which makes the Indians all high. So three of the four remaining people try to escape. However, Alejandro doesn't want to escape, so he stabs one of the people who's trying to get out with a dart. So he dies. So the two people who escape, the guy gets tied to a pole, smears him in paste, and leaves him to be devoured by ants. Meanwhile, Justine is dressed up in makeup, and they hold her down, and they're going to do female genital mutilation. So she manages to get away. The guy begs for help, but she doesn't help him because she can't bring herself to kill someone. The kid who helps her escape, though, cuts his throat. So Alejandro like asks to be released, but Justine tells him to fuck off and runs away. So she manages to get away, and then she runs into some more of the Indians, and you're thinking maybe she's going to be taken back, but then the winged hussars arrive, or rather the private military company shows up and saves her, which is amazing. So yeah, so the private military company shows up, and they just start shooting all of the tribal warriors. Um, but being a stupid white woman, she's like, "You can't do that. You can't kill them. They're innocent. Okay, they just killed all my friends in extremely brutal ways, but that doesn't mean that they have the right to like destroy them." So she pretends to have a phone and pretends to be live streaming the whole thing. And she convinces to get them to stop killing the cannibal savages because, like I said, she's a stupid white woman. So she goes to New York and gets interviewed with her father, other government workers, and the media. And she just claims, I was the sole survivor of the plane crash. The natives were super friendly. They didn't kill anyone. They helped me to survive. They're this like innocent, wonderful people who have to be preserved, and their way of life has to be protected. And the real evil here is the Petro Company militia who saved my life. They were just shooting them for no reason. And it's really bad. So it's just this sickening scene of her lying about it. And then at the end of the movie, you see her look out her window, and there's a group of activists with Alejandro's face in the style of Che Guevara. Now, there's an amazing mid-credit scene where Alejandro's sister calls Justine, and she shows her a picture of a satellite image that shows that Alejandro survived and has become the leader of the tribe. See, I call that going full Avatar. When like after the movie Avatar, like when what's his name, Dutch in Red Dead Redemption joins the Indians and gets like all dressed up and LARPs as one. That's going full Avatar. And I think it's like he finally has achieved what he wanted to do. He is the supreme leader of a tribe that he can rule over with life and the power of life and death. So I think Serp described it. He said the writing's not the best, but it's a very well made film. I think so long as you don't take it too seriously and you're not expecting something as, I don't know if you want to say dramatic as Cannibal Holocaust, and you kind of realize it's a bit tongue in cheek, you probably enjoy this movie. Like I said, it is a very good deconstruction or just mockery of the kind of like white savior complex narrative of the, like, once again, the noble savage narrative and just that whole thing. Now, personal politics, I guess kind of my view of this is I am kind of a right-winged environmentalist. So I agree with them with trying to save the jungle. I don't want the jungle to be destroyed, like, at all, if possible. Or if they need the resources to try to do it in a responsible way and ensure that the site gets cleaned up and the jungle can grow back over. But as for the, like, tribals there, yeah, it probably would have been a. I wish they had have let them wipe them out. They're fucking savages. um, I remember after I watched Cannibal Holocaust, Serp and I were talking about like what could be done, and I was just like, I don't know. I think if you were to just enforce basic like natural law, like, and say like anyone who had committed murder or cannibalism or ritualistic sacrifice, you could just execute them. You could probably take out most of the adults of these groups, and the children could just be distributed throughout the country and not told anything. Because these groups, I don't know. I just they're disgusting, and I don't think they really have a right to exist, and I'm okay with that. So like, there's a jaguar in this movie, like a black jaguar. So I want that to survive way more than I want any of the fucking cannibal tribals to survive. Um, and from my understanding, like the actual Amerindians in a lot of these countries fucking hate these people. Like most of them are Christian. They think they're like throwbacks or savages. I remember when the whole Pachamama thing happened, a lot of the I saw a bunch of Amerindians who were like who lived in cities and towns were like, those people are like degenerates, they're bandits who got like left cities to prey on people in the countryside. We don't like them, we're Christian, they're fucking like retards. So I mean, there's always the shit end of your society, and there's always like the underclass, or as I call them, the stealing class and the dealing class. I'm not saying like Latin American countries like Peru or anything to write home about, but there's a difference between, I don't know, whatever it's like in rural or urban communities in Peru, and like fucking throwbacks who are like eating each other and engaging in female genital mutilation. So, good movie, highly recommended if you can put up with the gore. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll talk to you guys real soon.